Sweet, eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. The simplest and most basic aspects of life as we know it are under attack from all angles. We are what we eat, and where we eat is essentially nature. But the natural world and the ways in which it propagates are no longer safe, no longer fully natural, and are subverted, inverted, and contorted in ways that are destined to kill us and perhaps our entire ecosystem if we aren't careful. Yes, food has become something to touch only with full chemical safety gear, if at all, and our bodies are decaying from the inside out, as is our lovely Mother Earth. But not for long, because we are here to create something much more sustainable on this episode of Rogueways with all of you badass listeners out there. But before we jump in, let me remind you that Rogueways is part of the Eyes Open Network, a collective of creators such as Benjamin Balderson of Odin's Alchemy, Claude Furry of Talking Nonsense, Steve Poikonen of Slow News Day, and John Brisson of FixYourGut.com. These beautiful beasts gather once a month under a random phase of the moon to spout ridiculousness at one another, and we record it all for your amusement. So come check out Eyes Open on the Rogueways YouTube channel, or the Eyes Open Facebook or MeWe group. Also, the Eyes Open Network now has a collective of services and goods you can trust from minds that are woke and hearts that are open through the Eyes Open Network page on rogueways.org. So go check it out to support some badasses who have your best interests at heart. Many of the people in this talk today are on that page providing services. So let me introduce you to our panel tonight. First up, we have Sarah Lefebvre. Sarah is a beautiful woman with a gorgeous soul, a hip hemp mama who wants you to heal yourself like she healed herself by taking control of your body, mind, and soul through the multitude of therapeutic uses of CBD and hemp products, which you can get from her via hiphempmama.com. Sarah, how's the greenery out there?
Oh, it's really hot. That's how it is. But I'm so honored to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
It is great to have you here. Next, we have John Brisson. John is a 70s bell-bottom selling face kicker and an expert in nutrition and our guts. He has a practice, a site, and a book dedicated to helping us sort out our gut-related health issues, which turns out to be nearly every health issue you might have. And does all of this at fixyourgut.com. John, how are your guts today?
Doing well, Lindsay. Thank you for having me back on Rogue Ways. And today we're going to bust the agricultural complex that our government has on our food and completely destroy the Illuminati food pyramid, hopefully.
Woo! I love that. Yeah, agricultural industrial complex should be a phrase that people know. I love it. And Alan Cisco is the realest of the real, a student of life and everything in it, including death, a thanatologist, a priest, a practitioner, a seeker, a teacher, a writer, and a paranormal expert. Alan, how is this realm treating you today?
Oh, very well. Very well. It could be worse.
Yes, true that.
That's all I got.
So let's start with the pointless question of the episode, as always. What is your perfect weather and temperature, speaking of how hot it is in many of your guys' locales, for the best type of day you could imagine, and why?
You know I'm a huge weather nerd, so this was a really tough one for me. But I mean, obviously the perfect weather is no streaks in the sky and an actual blue sky.
Natural weather.
Yeah, natural, real weather is my perfect. I don't know, though, like, I love those perfect 70 degree, 65 degree days and sunny, but I also love like the really hot stormy days because I was a storm chaser. So it's like, oh, those are so good. And then just those quiet, peaceful, snowy days. It's like, it's all kind of perfect in its own way, you know? So I can't really choose.
I love that answer. Yeah, there should be a multitude of days that we love, I guess.
I know Sarah stole my answer because that's my answer. 70-degree days where you can get vitamin D and perfect sunlight with no chemtrails in the sky. I also do enjoy a nice, like snowfall. It's pretty. The air smells great and everything. Nonetheless, you don't want to get it when you have like 12, a foot or two of snow. That's just too much. Of course, that never happens here in North Carolina where I live anyway. So,
no, never a big snow.
No, never. I mean, I could count maybe once in my life where we got a foot.
Wow.
And that was when I was in 8th grade. So, but then I live in the southern part of North Carolina, so that's why. If you live in the mountains, Asheville gets hit pretty heavily. But yeah, I mean, storms too as well. I mean, my dad was a storm chaser. We used to chase down thunderstorms as well as chase down snowstorms because it wouldn't snow around here very much. So I have affinity for that too as well. But yeah, I mean, just a perfect, 70, 75, sunny, not a cloud in the sky, no chemtrails. Yeah, think that's probably perfect for me. Be able to get some vitamin D, be able to get a lot of good sunlight. So that's perfect weather for me.
That's lovely. What are you thinking, Alan?
I really like mostly the spring and the fall, the transitional seasons, because usually, as everybody's mentioned, the cooler temperatures. I really don't mind it between about 40 and 60, where you actually have to wear a little bit more clothes, but everything's kind of cooler and crisper. Really, fall is my most favorite going into the October times in the season of Cernunnos and death and the cleansing of everything, going into hibernation. So that cusp of moving into that, usually during the celebration of Samhain, is really more of kind of my most favorite time. Just a variety of colors, as well as during the spring too.
I'm the same. I like spring. I like a little bit cooler usually, but today, so I was gonna say like a little bit cooler with like big poofy white clouds in the sky, like the real kind. But today it's 70 degrees out and there's no chemtrails and there's no clouds and it's kind of perfect. There's like a little cool breeze and I really like that. So it's hard, like whenever I'm in something in the moment, that thing is my favorite. So that's my favorite right now. We're all kind of like in the same.
It's 95 degrees out here, almost 100, and heat index of 110. So
Ugh.
Yeah.
I'm not down with that.
No.
I live in Ohio, so in the past 3 to 4 years, it's been over 100 and down to negative 45, I think it was.
What?
The one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ohio
Some
is,
geoengineering going on.
well, I live right up the road from Wright Pat Air Force Base. So, as you can imagine, there's everything you can think of in the sky here all the time,
Ugh.
including videos of various UFOs over the base. So
Yeah.
there's stuff like that going on just literally down my street, like a couple hundred feet.
Man.
And I live near Fort Bragg, so I get that as well too. I get a lot of weird inconsistencies living next to Fort Bragg.
I feel like this is kind of a random question. I guess it relates somewhat to our topic, but have you guys noticed that chemtrails seem to be more often, more frequent, more days? Like, I feel like there's just not been a day without them pretty heavy in the sky.
Now, Lindsay, we all know that Q is telling us that Donald Trump is going to stop those chemtrails any day now, just like 5G is going to kill us now. Q pretty much doesn't mention chemtrails because how could Q? But yeah, they do. They are mentioning, Jordan say the rest of them, that 5G. Trump's going to make it healthy now.
He's going to make it healthy. He's God.
Yes. I mean, it's just ridiculous at this point. But yes, that excellent point that you brought up. The chemtrails now are more than ever, and they got different chemtrails now that leave like a black cloud.
Yeah.
They're able to do more patterns with them now than they've ever been able to do before. And it's just, it's not stopping. Same as Obama and same under Trump.
Well, wasn't there even somebody showing that they've gone back in and have redone various Disney cartoons to add the trails in the background for the skies? I mean, that's beyond rabbit hole. You know, the rabbit's colon.
Yeah. It's seriously like the agenda is so clear and obvious. I've seen it in kids' books. I've seen it in right now I just got Windows 10 for the first time, and every whatever screensaver sort of thing they have, every single one of them has chemtrails in it, and it's just disgusting.
Like something related to Bill Gates does? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, never.
Totally just random chance. All right.
Obviously,
let's get into the meat of it today. We're going to start from the ground, and we're going to talk about our soil quality, because especially I think it's a thing that not a lot of people necessarily think about unless we're talking about the Dust Bowl. So who wants to start with soil quality?
Well, I guess I'll start. Because of general factory farming and lack of proper crop rotation, as well as the amount of pesticides that have been sprayed on the ground over and over and over again. And there's some studies, of course, if you look in mainstream science, they'll say that's not true, that organic grown foods or foods that you grow yourself, as long as you're, growing your own soil, it tends to have a higher nutrient content and tends to be healthier for you than conventionally factory farmed vegetables, which tend to have less of a nutrient, seem to be less nutrient dense.
And
And I think a lot of
you
that.
can taste that. Like if you eat like a conventionally grown tomato and an organic tomato, you can taste the difference in nutrients.
Oh, very much so. And also, a lot of people don't realize too that a lot of the non-organic vegetables have a wax coating on there that sometimes is from petroleum-based wax and sometimes it's from like beetle shellac-based wax. And that also will, affect, organic sometimes has those coatings on them too, but sometimes, most of the time it does not. So a lot of time when people are eating vegetables, even fruit, like we're eating an apple, mostly all conventional apples have that food grade based wax on them, where the organic apples generally do not. But yeah, I mean that affects the taste. The nutrients affects the taste. How many pesticides are on it? How it's grown. You know, everything affects nutrient profile, taste, and how it affects our microbiome and how it affects us all around.
Yeah, I was, and I was thinking about it. Well, I was looking up stuff last night actually to just try to prove that especially like where massive crops are grown and such, because they're just so overworked and there's tons of pesticides and things like that. Just trying to prove that there is a lack of nutrient density in there. And I mean, obviously these chemicals are burning out the soil, but at the same time I was thinking, well, all right, so would the fruits and the vegetables and whatever's being grown, would they not be forming properly if they weren't getting the type of nutrients? But then I go back and I think, but then there's fertilizers and there's all these, chemical things that they put on there. And you're right, Lindsay, you can taste the difference when you get, a hothouse tomato or, it's like cardboard. There's no flavor in anything anymore. And so it's really got my head thinking about it. And I'm like, even organic sometimes it just doesn't taste good either. And it's like,
no.
Is this real?
Yeah.
And Sarah's 100% right about that. We know glyphosate can chelate manganese, for example, the mineral manganese out of human bodies. So is it possibly able to do that to the soil as well? I mean, I haven't seen any studies, but I would assume that's definitely capable of doing so. So, yeah, I mean, Sarah's 100% right about that. I mean, also when we talk about organic farming, there's a difference between like me, myself, growing like jalapenos in my backyard, which are true organic, and then there's actually factory organic farms, and a lot of your organic pesticides, they use, we talk about GMO later, they use Bacillus thuringiensis, BT toxin as an organic pesticide on vegetables. So just because something's labeled organic, even though it is better than conventional, doesn't necessarily mean that it's really good either. So it's like there's like a tier. Like we'll never have the food that the elites have. Okay, like even if you grew it perfectly yourself, you're never going to get what they have unless unless you have millions and millions of dollars. Now you can get close to that growing it yourself if you have like a controlled greenhouse and a clean water supply and stuff like that. And there's steps down from that of how contaminated your food is. And just because something's organic doesn't necessarily mean it's healthy for you.
Yeah.
I just think about. Go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, the BT, the bacteria which is in soil, is what they if you gather it up, you can kill the insects because it can be used against them as like a natural defense. The problem is it's used to destroy the guts of the insect, and when they use it within the compound of the glyphosate, it causes they like to act like it's not going to. I mean, this is leading into the GMO problem of how it affects the GI tract of the body, because the effects of the glyphosate causes, when it gets into our cells, to chelate, which basically like strangles them, and they can't get nutrients, which is what it causes really to the plants, which have less of a nutrient available that the natural, as you're talking about the organics. And then there's just a waterfall effect of the leaky gut effect, because that's what it's supposed to do to the insects, is blow their guts up.
Alan, you're 100% right. We know that glyphosate kills lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, which are both probiotics. I have a section of this in my new book called Fix Your Mitochondria about things that are killing us in the modern world. And there's a lot of evidence of how bad glyphosate is. And when we talk about Bacillus thuringiensis and we talk about BT toxin later, when we talk about GMO, you're 100% right, man. I mean, the combination of both of those things, and people that are on proton, well, I guess we'll get more of that later, but the combination of all of that is really messing people's digestive tracts, and they don't even realize that.
And here's another thing too, is that it's been scientifically proven that soil has a type of bacteria in it that when you go like outside barefoot or when you're digging in the dirt, it makes you happier. It's because it stimulates your serotonin receptors and creates serotonin within your body. And if you're working in depleted soil, you're not going to get that. So if we're growing stuff in completely depleted soil, then we're not getting those feel good, chemicals that we do actually naturally create within our bodies. And then you could look at this from a point of, wow, no wonder there's so much mental illness going on. And wow, no wonder everybody's all,
It's like
unhappy.
Very materialist way of looking at how we are literally disconnected from the earth. That's crazy. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. It also makes me think about how the way we garden, it's like in nature, you would like grow something, right? And like some of the leaves or whatever would fall off onto the ground and then they would decompose and there'd be like bugs in there and there'd be like shit in there. And it would all like come together to make the soil healthier. And we take all that out and we rip it out and we keep like the ground bare. And like we're not putting anything back into the soil like it does in nature. And so,
right.
I mean, I feel like this problem just keeps getting worse and worse and we're not even trying to address it. I guess there's some places that are trying to compost and then use the compost in their gardens and
biodynamic farming. Yeah, I mean, Sarah's right in that the hemostatic soil organisms, Bacillus is one. When we talk about Bacillus thuringiensis, which produces BT toxin, that is what Bacillus is a genus of endospore forming bacteria that live in the soil. And they're everywhere. They're actually ubiquitous in nature in a lot of ways. But a lot of these factory farms, when they're applying all these pesticides and all these chemicals and herbicides and stuff like that, it is killing the natural bacteria that lives in the soil. And in doing so, people, like even most of us, it's the whole hygiene hypothesis, where if you make everything completely clean, then how is a person able to get microbes in their gut? Because we have both, probiotic microbes in our gut and opportunistic microbes in our digestive tract. In a healthy person, you have a better ratio of the commensal or the good compared to the opportunistic. And we're not getting exposed to these bacteria that make up our, immune system early in life. And it's causing a lot of host of issues like asthma and allergies and a lot of chronic conditions that we used to get when we were actually more out in nature. And these compounds, they drive our immune system. Our gut is our second brain. And so there's a lot of issues with how our modern food system and how our modern agriculture is, even modern life, that we're not being exposed to this, and it's harming our children in a lot of ways.
And it's ironic because that goes back to what like the parents and grandparents, no, let your kid go out there and play in the yard and get dirty and eat that dirt. It's fine for them.
Yeah.
And now such natural wisdom is, well, even going back is like the beginning of the AD era being demonized as that basic natural occurrence. I guess you could call it the motherly wisdom of like the symbolism of Mother Earth and the natural wisdom of the mothers with their children and raising them and such, and how they were, profusely demonized to begin with of natural existence within the environment, and going towards the more the more scientific breakdown of things, as opposed to the holistic looking of them that vary under the microscope and forgetting the rest of the whole organism, and just destroying the natural ability of the bodies to build what it's supposed to. And then you have things like the first time a kid eats some wheat or a peanut, they like go into anaphylactic shock and are allergic to like 50 things after that, because the natural genetics we have just snap into motion and resist this Frankenfood that's given to the children, because it's not natural at all in the body. I mean, the alarm systems go off and you're literally, it's poisoning your kid with like a simple peanut.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a good point, though, too. Like, this has been an agenda for a very, very long time that we've been headed this way, and it's at very many different levels that it's been going on and leading here to where we're at. But so even if we had like some decent soil and we were composting and we were putting that back into the earth, you know, and we maybe stopped adding some of the nasty shit that makes the soil really bad. What about the shit that we choose to put into our food intentionally? I guess glyphosate is one example we've already brought up, but what other types of stuff do we know that we're putting into our food?
Well, we fortify our grains with iron, as well as folic acid. Of course, you know, folic acid is not found in nature. Natural forms of it would be folates, like calcium folinate and 5-methyl 5-ml the 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. Folate would be examples of what you normally get when you ingest vegetables, you know, cruciferous vegetables, you know, green leafy vegetables too as well, that you would get. So we're fortifying our food with, you know, most people can't use folic acid. It's useless. So if you're pregnant and you're trying to, you know, protect against neural tube problems within the womb, you know, eating all that folic acid, you know, there's a good percentage of the population where that's not going to do anything at all, because you're not going to be able to convert it into the other forms of folate that are actually needed. As well as iron, fortifying with iron, there's tons of studies that show that, one, it feeds both probiotic and opportunistic pathogens when we ingest iron, because bacteria need iron for their own survival. And second, it pokes holes and causes inflammation in the intestines when it of itself. And there's also, you know, when we talk about glyphosate later, is celiac disease people reacting to the gluten proteins, or is it a combination of glyphosate being sprayed on the wheat and iron fortification, which all three of those lead to the rise of celiac disease? Because in France, for example, they eat some of the highest amounts of wheat per capita in the world, but they have some of the lowest rates of celiac disease in the industrialized world.
That should show us something.
Yeah, and they don't really fortify their wheat with iron. They don't spray their wheat very heavily with glyphosate. They also use shorter.
It's like a huge hubris that we're like, hey, we're going to take this food and we're going to make it better than nature made it. It's like, why would we think we can do that?
The mutation of the genetics of the food is such a haphazard method of doing it, because they just want to shotgun it right now. And you cannot tell what the genetic evolutionary process is going to be with these foods as they continue to be I guess I would say reproduced, but it's almost not being reproduced. It's like completely contorted, and just the genetics get completely out of whack, almost like when you have a genetic bottleneck in an area of living breeding DNA with mammals or whatever, humans. I mean, I use that instance because I'm in Ohio, and you see like problems arise because the genetics are all jacked up and are not normal like they're supposed to be, and this in turn reacts with what everybody's saying with the genetics of humans, because there's a large amount of our DNA we don't even know what it's used for, which they incorrectly called junk, and it's not junk. It wouldn't be there for no reason at all. And so who knows what the Frankenstein things they're creating interact with the, I guess you could call it, natural genetics that we have. But that even opens up a greater question of, if our DNA was messed with in the past, I guess you could get into the whole theories of the contortion with the Anunnaki experiments, et cetera, et cetera. You know, you don't even know how far back the problems go with our DNA, with what's being created currently with science. It's just creating a perfect storm that there's so many things at play that will come into fruition from it currently, and then later down the line, that our children and generations can end up so utterly devastated with just the simplest thing as their immune system, which affects everything, that it's just a massive tsunami of utter devastation of our populations, like everybody knows with the simple thing of fertility, because that's dropping in mass numbers, and certain places like Japan have a decrease in their population, and they're literally trying to almost lure people to have babies.
Yeah, and the United States also has a massive drop, and nobody seems to really be talking about the fertility rates in both men and women are drastically lower than they ever have been.
Hey, Alex Jones is. Atrazine's turning the frogs gay, so he has.
Yeah, but we're not allowed to say his name anymore or think about him, so stop it.
I'm sorry. I apologize about
We're
that.
gonna get banned.
But remember, if you get the non-organic corn that's still non-GMO, you won't get glyphosate, but instead you'll get atrazine. So.
Oh, wow. So that's a weird thing when you're talking about genetic manipulation in the past, is I've heard that corn and wheat both have no, like every other food, we can kind of trace all of the steps that they took to get to their current form, but both corn and wheat just had this like massive leap and there's no in-between steps. So
no, that's been disproven. There's something called, when we get the GMO, we'll talk about the difference between selective breeding and we'll talk about the difference between selective breeding and genetically modified plants or organisms, whatever you call it. But that has been proven. There is ancient wheat. It's called einkorn wheat. You can still buy it, and you can see the steps of how through the agricultural revolution that we took wheat, we made it grow shorter stalks, contain more gluten, so that you can get more profit from it.
Okay.
And then, so actually, there's some people who are celiac who can actually tolerate einkorn wheat. And some people who cannot in small amounts of, it just depends on the person.
Put some glyphosate on it and see if they can still tolerate it.
No, I don't think so. I have celiac disease myself. I've tried einkorn wheat and even I still can't tolerate it. But then there could be other issues. But it's like, it depends on the person. I've known some celiacs. If you're celiac, I don't just say go out there and try this. But I know some celiacs who are able to eat perfectly grown foods that contain, gluten like rye and einkorn wheat with no issues whatsoever, and they show no antibodies when it's grown, organically without the use of, synthetic pesticides and stuff like that. So it can be done.
So besides like the stuff that we grow the food with, like glyphosate, whatever it's called, that gets actually in it, like when we're making food, like for example, we have all these like cookies and chips and breads and things, and they are filled with high fructose corn syrup.
Right.
And what about those types of ingredients that we add to food that are highly damaging?
They're not good.
They're all
I mean, high fructose corn syrup, they used to find out that inside of its processing to get it, for some reason or another, mercury was introduced.
Yes.
And foods that have high fructose corn syrup in them have higher amounts of mercury. So pretty much it goes like this: the closer you can get to a food not being processed, the better it is for your body. Now, I might say that I don't eat organic processed food from time to time. Yeah, I'm guilty of it.
Yeah,
but
all the time.
The closer you can get from it not being processed, the better you are in theory of how healthy it's going to be for you. Yeah. And there's also preparation methods too, which would take hours to get here. Like soaking your grains. Maybe sprouting them if you have enough time. When it comes to meat, make sure that you don't burn it to form polycyclic amines, or if it's starches, you don't want to burn them either because they form acrylamides. For example, you wouldn't want to eat a lot of French fries, even though they're delicious, because they contain acrylamides, and actually they might be worse than the polycyclic amines in meat, because man's been burning meat since the dawn of time, and recently we haven't been eating French fries except for maybe the past couple of 100 years. So there's many different things of what affects your food preparation, cooking methods, where it comes from, source, all of that.
It's not fair though. Like, I understand that sugar and fat taste good because my brain wants it because it's a survival thing or whatever. But why does burnt meat taste good?
Because of the burnt sugars, the polycyclic amines, your body, it's been there for, it's like, there's certain things that the tongue and the brain seems to like. Burnt meat is one, but not for everyone. Another is salt. Some people detest salt, but most people love salty foods. Sugar is extremely addicting. It's almost like, it's the increased amount of dopamine that people get from sugar is ridiculous.
And, if you're like craving burnt food, it could also mean that your body's deficient in like some vitamin or mineral. And Yeah, it's just like burn the meat, give us what we need, but it's not providing you what you need. It's just your brain signaling, hey, we need something, and this burnt meat over here might be what it takes to. Yeah, I don't know, but
No,
yeah,
no, you're 100% right, Sarah. I mean, there's a lot of people who suffer from pica, where they eat, or
yeah.
pica is usually unknown foods. Like they'll crave raw ice, and you'll
I
see
had
their
that when I
bodies.
was pregnant. Yeah. I
Their
craved
bodies.
ice, Alka-Seltzer, aspirin, dirt, like, oh, yeah. And it was because I had an iron deficiency.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
For most people, it's because they have an iron metabolism issue, and in
Yep.
doing so, it causes them to crave foods that they, the dirt
Chalk.
you can get iron from. Not necessarily the ice, though. The ice thing's always puzzled me.
It's weird. It's the
Yeah.
crunching. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But
there's
I mean,
something about stress release and chewing or in crunching something,
Right.
I've heard.
But the toxic world that we live in depletes minerals and vitamins from us too, and we don't get it in our food as well. So it's kind of like most people are walking around like 80% of the population is magnesium deficient in the United States, and magnesium extremely important for activating your parasympathetic nervous system, helping with sleep, keeping you calm, regulating your migrating motor complex for your digestion. And we're all, I mean, once I started supplementing with magnesium, and I've been doing ever since, I never get muscle twitches. I never get Charlie horses. I remember getting Charlie horses in high school all the time, and not anymore. It's crazy of how so many of us are walking around with deficiencies that we're unaware of.
Yeah. When I was pregnant with my daughter back in 2008, I started, I had my very first aura migraine. And that's where like your vision goes blank in the center and you get these weird blinky lights. It is very, very scary. And everybody's like, oh, you're having a stroke. And I'm like, no, I'm not having a stroke.
I get them when I eat gluten. It's really scary.
It is. And that's one of those things. Is it the gluten or is it like the GMO gluten kind of, that's what you have to think about. So when I got my first one, I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And found out that it was related to foods. Like I can't eat caramel because of a certain amino that's created when the sugar is burning into an actual, caramel. And then any aged cheese, stuff like that, there's just something in it that causes these migraines. Well, I posted actually on Facebook the other day about how I had an aura migraine, and it's probably been a good year and a half, maybe even 2 years since I've had one. Wow. And I had been eating vegan foods, like vegan popcorn and vegan, it's just vegan cheese. Yeah. And because I was like, cheese, I can eat cheese again. No, I look at the ingredients and it's yeast extract is the only thing I didn't know what it was. And I was like, that's got to be it. And you know what that's a cover for? MSG, which is a huge migraine trigger.
Wait.
Yeah. Well, okay, hold on. Not MSG per se, but it is natural glutamates. It's a little different, but it can react in the same way in the glutamic pathway. So the glutamic pathway in the brain, it could act the same way.
So this is one of those things that they've like renamed so that we won't know not to eat it?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Well, they also changed a long time ago the way that sugar was labeled on packages, because they realized parents were getting wary of how much sugar was, especially in the garbage cereals that kids were getting. And so they changed the terminology, and now they're getting rid of so much sugar being in it to added sugar and then high fructose corn syrup, and that's not labeled as sugar, so they can get away with tricking you what's actually in the product you're drinking. And children's like fruit juices and such are just that's
trash.
All that they're drinking is just liquid crap.
Yep.
Because
go ahead.
Yeah, scientists have done studies with rats, and when they're given an option between cocaine and sugar, the rats will take sugar instead.
Wow.
I mean, that tells you something. And also, one of the scientists who focuses on vegan diets, he's written books on cheese, and there's actually addictive properties to cheese, which are called
opioid peptides.
Casomorphins and such.
Casomorphin.
That can get you addicted to just cheese itself. So there's so much on the market that's literally just, they're the guys in a business suit, but what they're doing is opening up their trench coat in the alley to the kids after school saying, what do you want? I mean, that's literally what
100%, Alan. I mean, you brought up something about casomorphin or casein protein. The other opioid peptides are gluten in wheat, avenine in oats, xenin in corn, Spinach has roboscalin and casein, which is in cheese and dairy products, mainly animal cheeses. Mainly is where casein is. But actually, most people love the taste of McDonald's fries, and they would always say it's because they were cooking them in the beef tallow. It's actually incorrect. They were adding wheat extract. They were adding extra gluten into McDonald's fries in and of itself to make people crave them because it would increase the opioid peptides, which increased the dopamine, which would make people want to eat more of them.
Good old Mickey Dicks.
So the opioid peptides is not only casein. Gluten is one, roboscalin, avenin, xenin, which is in corn. They all contain similar peptides that some people may react to. Like for me, I react negatively with gluten. Like casein, I'm fine with. I'm also, but then again, most of the casein I ingest is different between A1 and A2. You would be better off eating goat dairy over cow dairy. There's many different differences in that too as well, and also how it's processed and homogenized and all that. I won't get into it forever here, but
it's like they went out, they fucking tested the shit, and they're like, "Oh, this shit gets people more addicted. Let's put that in our food." Like, there's no difference between them and people and like heroin dealers.
Well, and the worst part is a lot of the people behind that are the goddamn psychologists. They're the ones that really love to get in there and like, oh, I can tell you how the human mind works. Give me a fat paycheck and on your payroll, and I'll show you how to put the image on the TV, set up your aisles in your store, where to put the product placement of like the sugary cereals are always at child eye level. Evil people.
Evil.
Selling is psychology. It's a psychological act to successfully sell things. They have people, they hire people to tell you what colors to use, what wording to say, and how to, even spacing of things and proper placement. Like,
fonts.
It's bad.
So that's, I mean, they're the same ones who decide which new names to give the things. When we realized that high fructose corn syrup was bad, they changed it to, what was it? Did anybody get that one? They have a new name.
There's all kinds of names for it. There's oh gosh, what was it?
I know they've changed stuff like aspartame.
Yeah, you won't see aspartame anymore.
Yeah,
well, not much.
Like
sulfate, potassium,
glucose.
Like you have to look at
sucrose.
Fructose. No, they'll call it invert sugar. They'll call high fructose corn syrup invert sugar, which is very similar to one another. So they'll try to add. They'll try to mask it.
Yeah. And that's a psychologist thing too. They're like, well, they don't like this, so if we call it this, and then they'll eat it. And that's somehow legal, which I think is criminal. It's like we figured out the science and we figured out what we want to eat, but now we have to like follow your fucking little name through it.
Good old trade secrets.
Or like Sarah was saying, them putting yeast extract when really it's free glutamic acid. But they don't call it free glutamic acid. Instead, they call it yeast extract, so you don't know any better. Just like nitrate-free bacon, but yet it has celery juice in there, which has natural nitrates. So it's all in the wording, and it's so disruptive to the average person.
I have to say, like the regular nitrate foods, like bacon and beef jerky and things like that, instant migraine. But celery juice, even though it is a nitrate, so no problem. Absolutely no problem with it. Yeah.
And it's different in its formulation and and interacting. I mean, that's pretty common with
that. Like, why, if it's the same thing, then why would it act differently in each different?
Because it's a different package. The sodium nitrate is processed, and there's different amounts, and you're also producing nitrates too. When you're swallowing your saliva has nitrates in it too as well. Your body uses nitrates. We use nitric oxide as a very potent vasodilator and transmitter. But it's still, a lot of people realize when you buy your food, you got to check the labels, but you got to do more than that. You got to like double check it, sometimes triple check it. And then there's some things that are listed like, which Sarah should know about this, about when the way they strip the CBD oil. There's CO2 critical extraction. And there's hexane extraction,
and there's ethanol extraction.
And they don't label ethanol hexane. So there's going to be some hexane residue left in that CBD oil, and you're going to be getting some hexane, which is not good.
No. And there's no way for us to find out which have which.
if a company,
unless someone says CO2 critically extracted, you go with that.
that's
But
the only
majority of
one I
the
use,
companies, they do not have to label hexane. They don't have to label the hexane as a byproduct or an inactive ingredient, which Sarah should, you know all this.
I do.
And a lot of people are completely unaware of that. When you go buy oils from the grocery store and they're labeled non-organic, okay? 9 times out of 10, hexane was used in the extraction method to make those oils, whether it's olive oil, whether it's coconut oil, no matter what it is. It's usually used, and a little bit of hexane will be left behind for you to ingest.
And if you get an oil that's in MCT, the MCT could also have been extracted in the exact same way. So it's just as janky. It's so fucked up. It's disgusting.
So Sarah,
it makes me so mad.
do you vet your sources for that quality when you're looking? Because don't you sell CBD products, right?
I do. Yeah, I only use one kind, and because I had tried several kinds before, and when I first started using CBD a couple of years ago, I had no idea about the extraction process. I just knew that there was, the full spectrum and the isolate. Had no idea. I wanted organic, and that's how these, lesser companies would push it. They'd be like, "Oh, it's organic, it's natural," and then once the science and the actual people that cared about giving a good product started showing off their testing results and purity results and their extraction stuff, then we started understanding better about how you have to watch for mold. The one that I use, they seal their hemp they seal their hemp within like 4 minutes of harvesting it, so there is no mold growth, and then it's CO2 extracted because of the lesser amount of toxins. So, when I found out about the MCT thing, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so gross.
Sarah, whenever you get a chance, let me know. I guess I'll look in the Eyes Open group and stuff like that. I'll link to, your page of selling the CBD oil on my website and on, and everything like that. Because I've been looking for a high quality one. I haven't figured out one yet.
For sure, yeah.
So
hiphempmama.com.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right, so let's talk GMOs. What issues do you guys have with GMOs?
Oh gosh,
everything. It goes against God and natural law for us to try to think we can temper with what the universe has given us, and try to insert
corporate control of our food.
Try to insert foreign genes for profit, and DNA and RNA, depending on exactly what we're talking about, or even insert genes into animals, and it's just oh my god, like BT toxin that Alan was talking about earlier. He was 100% spot on with. Okay, so Bacillus thuringiensis is a bacteria. It's a bacillus that lives in the soil, and it produces this toxin called BT toxin, which kills insects. When the bacteria gets into the insect's gut, because insects' guts are more alkaline than the human gut, it produces this toxin and it kills them from the inside out. Okay, because a lot of bacteria, that's how we die as human beings. They produce toxins, it gets in our bloodstream, it causes sepsis, and then if it's not treated, we die. Okay, so it's the same with this insect. So the scientists claim, it's safe because when you ingest the toxin, or if you ingest the bacteria, it doesn't survive the stomach acid and it's neutralized. Well, how about this? What about people who are on proton pump inhibitors where their resting stomach, pH can be anywhere between 5 to 6, and 4 to 6, should I say? And they ingest BT toxin. Maybe not all of it's properly inactivated. Then it goes into the alkaline small intestine when bicarbonate's released, and it causes inflammation. I mean, it's ludicrous to think that it's 100% safe when we have no human clinical trials. They say, well, it's been out on the market, for X number of years, therefore it's safe. That's bull crap. It's the same stuff they do with vaccinations, and it pisses me off.
Yeah, the FDA was repeatedly sent documents by multiple sources researching the effect of GMO foods on, of course, specifically rats, and the effects on the almost half death birth rate of the infant rats, the generational destruction of the testicles, so that there was no way to breed later on for the next population of rats, the multiple levels of disruption, physically and neurologically in the rats, which we see widespread in all the human beings in our population where these items have been introduced. And this was sent repeatedly to the FDA, and they knew that this was taking place, and
Yeah.
they ignored it and said that it wasn't taking place because the deputy commissioner of the FDA in 2010 to 16 was Michael Taylor, who was formerly of Monsanto, and they were repressing all these documents, which in a lawsuit was, I think it was 1992, brought all this to the surface, and they had to admit, oh yeah, we knew all along this was causing this. And then they started hiring shills from Monsanto into the FDA, and they would repress more research and say, well, it's not conclusive, and they would only do it for short-term amounts of time, and then say, oh, look, there's no long-term effects on people, and they wouldn't continue what's called a longitudinal study, which is over extensive period, if not generational, to show the genetic dysfunction and passed on to people. And this affects the human body in so many ways. I'm sure that, sorry, what's the other guy that looks like me on here?
Oh, God.
No, him, the guy next to me on the screen.
Oh, John.
Oh, me.
Sorry, John. You know, with the proteins of the gluten, it's so dense and increased that the human body doesn't have a way to normally digest it. And because it can't digest it, it can cause what's called, I think I'm pronouncing this right, dysbiosis, which is like flattening down the.
Well, no, dysbiosis is when you're talking about when it damages the cilia of the digestive tract, and it damages the mucosal barrier, causes leaky gut. That's what dysbiosis is, when it kills bacteria, or where you have more opportunistic bacteria than probiotic bacteria.
Yeah, because also there's so many antibiotics in the meat that we're consuming as well. That's laced with a lot of crap. And I know that from living on 3 farms and actually working in the slaughterhouse industry and researching into raising of livestock, what's given to the animals and the conditions that they're in, which just overtly pollutes the meat that people are eating. And a lot of people who, and I don't want to go down this avenue, but a lot of people who scream about the horrors of eating meat and what it does to the human body, yeah, you are correct in some instance, but you don't see a lot of those problems in like the Inuits who eat normal meat that's not corrupted and perverted, or Chinese that live in the countryside and aren't factory farming. And the book called The China Study shows the effect longitudinal on the health of most Chinese who have adopted a standard American diet, who've never had the diseases that we have here, and now they're widespread over there. And that was an American and a Chinese scientist studied the effects on the genetics and the health of the Chinese people, and now they're having devastating effects of it that what we have over here in the States. And you know, the meat, not only just with the growth hormones, but with the antibiotics used because of the conditions the animals are in. And then on top of that, the horrors of slaughtering the animals, which cause massive hormonal release and stagnation and bacterial infection. And then the way the meat's sitting around, chicken has arsenics injected into it, aeration. Much of the meat that's discarded overseas is brought here, and vice versa, because then it can hide the pollutants that are in the meat because it's coming offshore. And we saw major problems with this with the mad cow disease years ago, and the banning of American meats, and a lot of this stuff that goes on. I mean, you see in some slaughterhouses, when they kill the carcass, it's hanging up, and they have literally a giant gun that will bombard it with like radiation to eliminate the bacteria.
What the fuck?
Great. You know, so yeah, I mean, the level
E. coli.
Right.
I mean, Alan's 100% right. A couple of things. I want to break that down. One, yeah, I am an omnivore. I do eat meat, okay? And I try my best to make sure it's pastured, heirloom. You know, I try my best to get the most high quality meat that I can. But a lot of people are unaware of too that they actually spray antibiotics on many vegetables and fruits that you eat, and organic apples contain tetracycline antibiotics, as well as the Trump administration just approved tetracycline to be sprayed on oranges and citrus fruits too as well. So that's another thing you got to watch out for. Because if you're vegan, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to escape away from it either.
Yeah.
Second, there's a big difference between selective breeding and genetically modifying, and I want to make that clear. Selective breeding is when people have taken a crop, like let's say almonds. Most people know almonds today. When you eat them, they're not very bitter. They have a little sweet, kind of like flowery taste to them. Okay, kind of maybe like a little cherry taste. Well, back in the day, majority of almonds used to be all bitter. They had very amounts of cyanide compounds. And we took the crops that were sweeter and bred them so that now that we have sweet almonds to enjoy. That is called selective breeding. Now, the same with gluten or wheat. Wheat is not actually genetically modified. It's been selective breeding. There is no GMO wheat currently on the market. They use selective breeding to have shorter stalks to have more gluten. Now, is that worse off for digestion, as Alan has mentioned? Of course it is. It's very detrimental to the health because the human body doesn't really do a good job digesting gluten. Mainly what breaks down gluten or what keeps it from being anti-inflammatory is our gut microbiome, which most people gut microbiomes are, and genes too as well, okay? So the combination of all of that is makes what makes people ill. Now, when you have a genetically modified organism, let's take corn, for example. They take genes out of Bacillus thuringiensis, the Bt toxin producing genes, and they put them into the corn. So the corn can now produce this toxin. That is totally different than taking a crop and breeding them or bringing two crops together over a period of time to get a new vegetable. And there's a big difference between the two.
Because people will make that argument. They'll be like, why would you care about genetically modified organisms? We've been doing that for thousands of years. It's like, no, we really haven't.
That's the main argument they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we were combining, it's like, what two animals, I can't remember, what two animals are used to make a donkey or a mule?
A horse and a donkey make a mule.
Yeah, a horse and a donkey make a mule. See, that, even though the mule is most of the time sterile, that's still natural, breeding of two animals that are close to each other from a taxonomy.
And like Neanderthal and Homo sapiens.
So it's the same with, making, broccoli, for example. We made broccoli. Okay, we made broccoli. And Dr. Seavey, he talks about it, how that all these selective breeding plants, actually we shouldn't eat them because they're dangerous because they didn't exist in nature or whatever. And I disagree heavily with Dr. Seavey on that, but that is another way of looking at it, that some people actually say that even the selective breeding crop should not be eaten. I don't think that's true because they're naturally made. They even happen randomly in the wild too as well. So that kind of, but still nonetheless, there's a big difference between selective breeding and genetically modifying an organism.
Yeah.
And so far, I mean, I guess you guys would not be a fan of glow-in-the-dark cats.
No.
That's a real thing. They have those.
Poor kitty.
Don't tell my kids.
Goats.
What?
Spider milk from goats.
Yeah. Yeah, spider webs coming out of goat tit.
Yeah.
It's fucked. It's fucked. We're doing crazy things. And like what they have sheep grown in plastic bags that are producing human organs inside of them. So like even besides the food we're eating, we got some fucking crazy shit going on.
Does anybody just stop to think this is a bad idea? Like,
no,
someone has to.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be here right now.
Well, so let's go back to the.
I was just going to add that with the ongoing birth defects of these crops and the poisoning with the glyphosate. I mean, it's so bad that they've studied workers who work in areas where the crops are sprayed.
Oh yeah! Oh my God, Alan!
And not even being like indirect contact. The level of birth defects in those workers is 70 times the normal birth defect rate. I mean, and they don't even need direct exposure. Nope. They did a study. Let me get the correct percentage. That sorry, I should know this number right away. they looked in, I think it was.
I mean, look how many cancer cases are being in the United States right now after glyphosate. It's crazy. If people who use, working in agricultural or working in lawn care services and stuff like that, and getting rare cancers that glyphosate's linked to, it's just ridiculous.
70 times higher birth defects means that it should be outlawed. People are like raging about guns, and it's like our food is killing more of us than stupid guns.
I think it was a study in Canada where they found that all of the mothers in Canada, in their breast milk, that they were, it was like 93% have the Bt toxin in them.
Yeah. Ugh. And glyphosate too. They've done multiple studies of glyphosate in breast milk and bisphenol A as well, concentrations in kids, if we're talking about poisons on that too as well. But yeah, I mean, it's sad of how, that's one of the main ways that we pass toxins out of our body.
It's by creating a child.
Is by creating a child. Yeah, I mean, men pass it through their semen. Women pass it through the active thing of placenta and actually creating a child and birthing a child and feeding a child. It's kind
of fucked up. Our bodies are like, we want to get rid of this. Let's put it in that thing, that helpless, innocent thing. We'll just dump all of our toxins into it. We'll be better. Oh God. Well, let's go back to since we got into the animal production, massive animal production and some of the bullshit with that. Let's talk about that more. One of the things that I really liked that, oh God, now I forget who it was. Oh, it was Crow. Crow, when he was on Rogue Ways, said, that you can be sure that these animal slaughterhouses are dedicated to some entity or energy or, outcome that they want. And it made me wonder because why not? There's all that horrifying trauma going on there.
Well, hold on. Or blood too as well. But one thing I want to bring out, Lindsay, to that is no one ever thinks about the funeral homes when they drain the blood of people who have died too, as well as blood sacrifice. No one ever thinks about that. They're getting rid of that too and filling the bodies full of embalming fluid.
Oh, and you're not even allowed. You're not even allowed to do anything yourself. You have to send a body to get cremated or.
Yeah, so whatever. Imagine all that, like the amount of bloodletting that's happening in slaughterhouses, funeral parlors, doctors' offices, like, it's got to be a sacrifice to somewhere. And I mean, I eat meat, but then again, like Alan was talking earlier, talk about the Inuits. Weston A. Price did a lot of studies with indigenous people and everything. And the closer pretty much the thing of this podcast should be, the closer we get back to nature and how our ancestors did it, probably the better off and healthier that we'll be as far as now. I'm not going to say that paleo man didn't die from live to be 90. Now, majority of them die from accidents. Okay. Let's be real here. But majority of them didn't die from chronic diseases, though, however.
Dude, I'd rather have us all dying from accidents because we're out living actual life in nature than fucking in our sterile little boxes staring at a television.
Shit, yeah.
Well, one of the problems with the so-called, I'm not even going to use medical industry, is, they're saying it's prolonging life, but it's literally like a long-term embalming process of what they're doing to you.
Yeah.
Like people really walking around like the guitarist from the Rolling Stones, just basically a walking zombie that's just embalmed with drugs and alcohol and cigarettes. And I work in funeral home, and that blood and such goes right into your sewage system.
Yeah.
So that goes into the process plant in your city to be recycled and cleaned
It's
up.
the Ouroboros eating the steak, brother. I mean, the steak eats its tail, the Ouroboros. It's exactly what it is.
Well, Alan, you've had so many experiences. You also worked in a slaughterhouse, right?
Yes. Yeah. I finally quit when they told me to clean the drain, and I asked where, and they said, with your hands. And I said, where's the glove? Oh, we don't have those. Nope, that's it.
Wait.
I wasn't going to.
But did you do that? Did you do that?
that they couldn't get to go down the drain. The most horrible thing that I saw there was a house out back, and some deer were laid in there to bleed, and they kind of like left them there. So you were supposed to go in, clean it out, and the coagulated sludge of the blood that had filled the floor. And
Oh,
it watching Clive Barker don't compare to what was seen in those places. To see that and then the people pick it up and eat it, you see why people are being molecularly corrupted on a very deep level. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that when you see animal after animal being slaughtered and processed, first off, it is palpable. You can feel the hormones in the air and the energy, and the people that work there, it's one of the places where not only are the people psychologically disturbed,
yeah.
but it's the largest areas of physical destruction to the human body and work-related injuries that exist because of the levels and the speed that they do it. And you will not find a knife sharper than in those places. People are losing things. I mean, if you read the history of slaughterhouses in the West, I mean, not way beyond what Sinclair wrote in the Jungle.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I was about to bring that up, Alan.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people talk about that book. He could not do it justice to the level of horror that goes on in those places. And that's just one I worked in. That's notwithstanding just the droves of them. And ironically, a lot of the countries that have really been non-meat oriented, like specific countries that are more Hindu Buddhist oriented, they are now adopting making slaughterhouses, and many of the people are raging about it, saying, you're going to bring karmatic hell to our country by bringing us into here, because they realized how much money is involved in not only the meat, but the trade of skins and leather. And if you've ever looked up how that's done, that's really disgusting. And I'm not talking about like some lone mountain man skinning one animal and doing it over days and days in the, outside.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with Alan. I mean, it makes me sick of how every part of the agricultural industrial complex, from whether it's fruits and vegetables to whether it's grains, if you're eating grains or if you're eating chocolate, and we talked about this on Facebook, Alan, you're getting a good amount of legalized, even organic, a good amount of legalized insect matter and animal droppings that's legal in the United States, where it's not legal in the European Union as much as we give crap to the EU. It's not legal there, but it's legal here. So it's just, and Sarah talks about mycotoxins. A majority of our food, because it's being stored, whether it's chocolate, when they dehydrate chocolate in the many different third world countries, when the coconuts, they let the coconut ferment to get the oil and stuff like that. The amount of mycotoxins that are in food, these toxins that fungus produce, is astronomical. And we're all just sitting here ingesting. It's like you get bombarded no matter what you do. Vegans get bombarded. Even carnivores like Jordan Pierce, which I think the carnivore diet is. Every now and then it could be useful, but most of the times it's. But anyway, you're getting bombarded every which way. Even if you try your best, you try your darndest to try to eat healthy, you're still going to get some crap in there that you don't want to. So pretty much it goes from not whether or not you can keep it away, it goes to I'm trying to make the smartest choices for my health that I possibly can, because Lord knows I don't know what I'm exposed to on a daily basis at this point. I mean, heck, what about volatile organic compounds? Like I'm sitting in a car, I'm breathing in VOCs right now.
True.
So part of it, I guess, to take away this is do the best you can. Small steps are better than anything. Do what you can within your own budget. And second, don't obsess to the point where, you're paralyzed with fear and you can't do anything at all, because we're all trapped in this toxic under the dome type experiment, and it's everywhere. And it's been everywhere in a part of the human existence since the dawn of man. Now, is it more nefarious now, in my opinion, than ever? Yes, but it's always been there.
Go ahead.
Well, another problem with not only is the meat completely laced with everything I've talked about, but these animals are also being fed the GMO crops.
Yep.
So that even doubles down. Not only do you have the gut destroying effects of the crops, but then the animals are laced with antibiotics, which goes in coupled with the effects of the GMO crops destroying our own immune system and gut bacteria. And then, and most people don't realize that a lot of the meat that people eat is dead dairy cows, because most people don't think about, well, what happens when the cow has problems and gets problems with the udders? Well, they're killed and ground up.
Turned into meat.
Yeah.
Right. And most people don't realize that. And there's problems within the milk that most people are drinking. It's not like the images that, if you look into the history of the pretty cow in the field with a bell around its neck, like you're in a mountain.
No.
If you've ever had grass-fed milk, which when it comes out of an udder can have like 40% butter fat.
Yes.
If you actually drink that at a farm, you'll get the shit almost immediately. That's a completely different product.
There's a huge difference. Huge difference.
And you know,
effect on your gut.
These animals that are eating the GMO feed, that obviously it's doing the same janky-ish that, you know, it's doing to all of, you know, the vegetables and all that, whatever, but your meat's basically dead before it's killed, because there's no nutritional value to it. And then, you know, in these industrial animal farming complexes, they just sweep out all the waste with some hoses, and then they take it and they spray it on all the crops around their barns, and you know, toxify the air for the neighborhoods around them. And then what's going in, whatever GMO and disgusting chemical nonsense came out of that poor animal has now been sprayed into whatever crop, soybeans, probably GMO, or tobacco, or what, you know, whatever it is that they're growing, and that's going right back into the system. So it's just a sick circle of never-ending jank.
And a lot of people don't talk about that, Sarah, but you're 100% correct. And also, one thing I want to mention too, when the animals are eating all these, you know, genetically modified grains and stuff like that, they are getting glyphosate that is building up in their body too as well. So then when you're eating that meat, you're also getting glyphosate on top of that too. So, you know, it's a never-ending cycle.
Because it doesn't break down. It doesn't break down. It compiles on top of itself. It builds and builds. So if it's in the animal dies, the waste from the animal goes into the plants, the glyphosate from the animal goes into the plant, so it's on top of it. It's just like stacked.
Well, the thing is the animal can detoxify glyphosate, and so can humans. It uses glutathione. The problem is that we're always using glutathione for everything else, mycotoxins and everything else too as well. So we're always ingesting glyphosate. We're ingesting it. We're drinking. Actually, the biggest source of glyphosate, one thing I want to mention, is in the water supply. The biggest amount of glyphosate that you get per the studies isn't the food you eat. It's not the meat you eat or nothing. It's the water you drink actually has the biggest amount. And Sarah just attested to why that is, because all that is going into the water table. But the thing is we can detoxify glyphosate with glutathione. The problem is that, you know, we're using glutathione. It's the master antioxidant. It's detoxifying everything else too as well that we come in contact as well. So the body's got to say, yes, exactly. The body's got to sit here and think, well, do I detoxify this? Do I detoxify that? What's, you know, more important? I mean, that's a simplistic way of looking at it, but that's still what's going on. So our body, the thing is, it's not that we get exposed to glyphosate once. Like, you know, you take one Tylenol, you know, that's once, except for the acetaminophen that's in the water, but I'm not even going to go there. But, you know, the glyphosate, you're getting it everywhere. You're getting it, you know, sprayed for your neighbors, the golf course down the street, you know, and all your food and all your water. It's in everything, and you're constantly ingesting it, and the body's trying to pump it out the best it can.
Makes you wonder where your HOA fees are going to.
It's going. So it's just crazy. It's just a never-ending cycle of it. And the human body. I will say this: as humans, we are able to adapt to some degree, because Lord knows we technically should be dead by now with the amount of foods and stuff that we are
amazing that we're alive
on a daily basis. But the thing is, you know, like a lot of people don't realize what Sarah mentioned. And I'm glad you mentioned it. And what Alan mentioned too earlier is the way the slaughterhouses are, you know, a lot of people don't realize that it's not just in the way that they kill the animals, which is horrific in and of itself. It's everything. It's, you know, the E. coli being everywhere because the, you know, feces being everywhere, and brain matter, which have pyrons, and then it's, you know, going, you know, all the chemicals, and it's going back into the ecosystem. It's like a
and
like
the
a never-ending cycle.
The trauma, the secondary trauma of the people, and the primary trauma of the people who are doing that. I mean, you cannot do that and not get traumatized.
Pretty much, if you eat food that you do not grow yourself in this modern age that we live in, pretty much somewhere down the line, there's suffering that comes from it. But it's everything. I'm talking to you on a phone built with Cupertino parts that, you know, was from slave labor.
Yeah.
So at this point, you know, we all sadly accept some sort of systemic, you know, guilt from all of this.
It's impossible.
No matter what you do.
It's impossible to be in the world to try to change it without being in the world and being a part of the problem.
It's sad but true.
Yep.
It's fucked up.
And another problem with the animals is most people don't realize that a lot of times those animals that die are ground up and fed back to the animals.
Yes.
Yep.
This is also a major problem that's occurring with a lot of pet foods, is because all of the animals that are killed at kill shelters, they're sometimes ground up and used in animal food, and all of their flea collars and such are ground up into it. So those chemicals are going, there's actually a book about this, about the poisoning of people's pets. And so pets are even being affected by this, which is why a lot of people, you can do it easier with a dog, switching them to a vegan diet. Cats are different because
you can't do it to cats. They can't produce taurine. Cats are carnivores. You cannot do it with cats. They will die. They cannot produce taurine.
Supposedly, there's, I guess, one pet food that adds it to it, but I'd like to know where they're getting that from.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
And like
but the thing is cat's digestive system is a carnivore digestive system, though. Like you're even if you feed the cat vegan, that is not how cats are supposed to live. Like they are, you know, you could argue human beings can eat vegan. That's true, but cats cannot. Like that. Even if they don't have the digestive capabilities to eat a proper vegan diet.
And I mean, it's kind of a joke that when you die, your dog's going to guard your body and weep, but your cat will start.
No, it's going to eat you. My cats will eat me.
Oh crap, the bowl's empty. Well, you know, so and so's body's there. Okay, what the hell? And then, like was mentioned about the water table on top, and I can actually talk about this. You know, all of our sewage gets put into the system, and then they want to recycle the water. Well, there are so many people who are on psychopharmaceutical drugs.
Yep.
It is like laced in their urine and their feces that's going into the water system.
Same with birth control. Same with birth control metabolites.
Yes, right. And there are so many psychoactive drugs, especially like Prozac, serotonin type drugs that people are ingesting just from their basic water, that the levels are beyond belief. And of course, like with the big running joke with Alex Jones, the frogs, the fish, various whales and stuff that are in the various bays around human populations where the sewage is just dumped in there, it's all in their DNA and then there's in their flesh. When people fish them out to eat them and they test them, it's in their skin. So people are getting doubled down on these drugs produced by the pharmaceutical companies. And actually, with the effect of insulin resistance in human beings, which is being caused by all these dietary problems, which is increasing the rise of diabetes. Diabetes drugs alone in the U.S. in just 2016 was at a point of sales of $51.5 billion, almost half a trillion, or half a hundred, billion. And that's just from diabetes drugs, and that's like the highest amount of revenue in the nation, above drugs that treat cancer and autoimmune disease. Not as if they're not a part of each other. And so those drug companies have a direct desire for people not to get well and get off diabetes medication, which has been proven documentary after documentary and study that diet can fix things like heart disease, diabetes, et cetera, if you stick with it, which is why fad diets never work and people gain the weight back and all the health problems because they just don't balance out their normal eating and diet like our ancestors did. It kind of,
or they don't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or they don't get sun. They don't, they're exposed to 4G and Wi-Fi, and they're nuking their mitochondria, like Jack Cruz talks about. They don't sleep in darkness and produce melatonin properly. Like, it's everything. We have totally gone away from how our ancestors lived to the point now where it's. I mean, I'm not going to say that I don't like living in modern life. I mean, I do. Obviously, I am. I'm not a Mennonite, but it's when you try to tell the average person any of this information, and I'm pretty sure that Sarah's got this too, of trying to explain how healthy and helpful CBD oil can be, and the natural, it's our body's natural ability for cannabinoids. The body produces cannabinoids. The cannabinoids that you get in CBD oil, how they help with pain and mood and everything like that. Trying to tell that to the average person, saying, here, there's multiple studies proving that CBD oil works. But yet, people will not look at it at all because it's natural. It's frustrating.
They don't. And a lot of it, I think, is because people don't understand what true balance even is anymore. Because we're so one level or another. We're either manic or we're depressed. It's just constant. And so if you tell people, this natural thing can actually help relieve your pain or help you focus and make you not all antsy and jittery and anxious and stuff, they're like, what does that even mean?
What does that even feel like?
What does that mean? I went through that too. I had no idea what calm felt like my whole life because I was so just constantly on edge. But once I felt it, I felt like, oh gosh, I'm supposed to be scared of this. So I understand where they're coming from because they don't understand what balance and calm and okay feels like.
I have the same thing. I think I've told the story before on air, but where I had, I relaxed one day and I didn't know what it was. And I was trying to describe to someone how tired I was. And finally, after many hours of trying to figure it out, they're like, do you think you're just relaxed? And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. It's a really neat feeling.
It's good. I like it. We should all do it.
We need
but to tie
everybody.
It back to what Alan said earlier is everybody now just wants SSRIs. They want to go to their doctor. Give me a prescription, instead of, using CBD oil or trying to activate their parasympathetic nervous system to reduce sympathetic dominance or doing any of that. It's give me that SSRI, give me, then they move on to even harsher like SNRIs or antipsychotic drugs because the SSRI ends up causing problems. And then they're urinating all this into the water table and it's like a never ending cycle.
Yep.
Yeah. In a psychological field, and I don't even use the word psychiatric field because I don't, of course, ad nauseum posted, don't agree with it wholeheartedly. I do think some people can be helped by certain pharmaceuticals for certain mental disease. I don't really use the term illness anymore. I use the term disease. And many people, including those that suffer from bipolar, depression, schizophrenia, a cavalcade of diseases, can be extremely helped just by a simple dietary change. I know a lot of people are flabbergasted when I tell them if they suffer from schizophrenia, if they go to a very whole foods, plant-based diet and get rid of any sugars that they can out of their diet that's not like a naturally fruit or whatever based sugar, that they can really get rid of a lot of the positive and negative symptomology of the disease. They've never heard that. Even their counselors they go to or social workers think that's a bunch of garbage. And I mean, it's just, I all the time when I'm on the bus, because people know I've been a psychologist, they're always asking me like, I'm suffering from this, they've changed my meds. Is this normal? That's what the meds are going to do to you. And I'll write down a list of everything else and I'll say, maybe you ought to look into this and this. And, oh, can you come in and talk to my, no, because that's going to get nowhere and they'll probably have me arrested.
No.
spot. Yeah, I mean, it the mental health field, just about everywhere is nothing but really poisoning. And I mean, we don't even have to get into the effects of the antidepressants and such that are involved in a lot of the school shootings that go on.
Yes.
That these people, they're alienated, they're ostracized, they've never been taught to center themselves, breathe, have a healthy diet, exercise, stretch. I mean, I hear people all the time on the bus talking about back and kidney problems, and yet every day I see them drinking soda all the time. They never stretch, and all they talk about is going to the hospital to be getting them some more pills to help with their back so they can go to work. It's like,
Right.
why are you even telling me this? Like, telling me about how great it is to be addicted to shooting heroin. Like, no, it's not. It's not, and you're just justifying poisoning yourself.
Yep.
So let's talk about what's wrong, because once we decide, like, well, maybe organic and GMO free foods are going to help us feel a little bit better and we can be a little bit healthier and detoxify a little bit more. But what's wrong with some of the certifications that we would see on some of the foods we would buy that say GMO free and organic?
Okay.
Depends on who they're owned by.
Right?
Yeah, it depends on who they're owned by. It depends on, I would always trust more. Like my family has it's not my immediate family, it's more my distant family, but they have a farm nearby that sells grass-fed, 100% grass-fed. Sometimes it is a little bit of grain finish if it's in the winter, but they use non-GMO grains and organic grains that they grow the farm themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I'd recommend most people to get to know their local farmers.
Yes.
Like get to know go to the farmers market.
Yes.
Try to find, good organic practices, look for biodynamic practices.
Mm-hmm.
Try your best to ask questions about, and you could actually look at, for eggs, for example, you could tell a factory egg compared to a chicken that's really happy and taken care of and eating grass and bugs and stuff just by the color of the yolk. If the yolk is dark orange, it has a higher retinol content. Therefore, it ate more bugs and ate a lot more grass. If it's yellow, it's factory farmed and you don't want to touch it.
Yeah,
in most
orange
cases.
is like bright orange too. It's really interesting.
So, when it comes to food, you want to get local and close to you as much as you possibly can. And I know that sounds like, climate change, type rhetoric and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think the more that you get to know the people that live around you and try to eat in season and try to eat what's local to you, and if it's healthy and if you could trust the farmers and get a good relationship with the farmer and stuff like that on the farmer's market, I think it would turn out best for most people in a lot of ways. But not everybody can do that. There's different tiers. Eating organic is better than eating non-GMO, non-organic. And then eating non-GMO, non-organic is better than eating regular standard. So there's tiers, and you do what you can based off of your wallet. Now, I got a video on Fix Your Gut, for example, about how to easily get pesticide residue even off of non-organic food. By soaking it in a baking soda solution for about 10 minutes and then washing. There's plenty of studies to show that it'll get 80 to 90% of the pesticides off of the vegetables that you're eating. So there's ways that you can do it to everybody's budget. The problem is most people say, well, it's too expensive to eat healthy or it takes too much time. Time, I could see that because proper food preparation is important and we live hectic lives. But for your health, it's one of the number one things that you can possibly do. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
Right.
One of the well, really two things that my personal problem with the whole, I guess you could call it organic movement, is it's been co-opted, not in a good way, as being fashionable now. Like with everybody throwing the word Zen this and Zen that on it, and then they dumb it down to 10-minute crap, fast food version of it. That's
marketing
the new
tactics
thing that happened with that brainless reporter that now is like all over the place, and everybody's downloading apps to be mindful. And now it's just like another pyramid scheme. It's like you just got duped again by consumerism co-opting something that should be healthy. And you see this in my area because we have a town next to me called Yellow Springs where Dave Chappelle lives. Okay, it's a great town because it was kind of found and has become this idea of resist the man, be whole foods, be organic, et cetera, et cetera. but now they're just a Silicon Valley version of it.
Yeah.
Because everything's like, here's a loaf of bread, it's $8. Well, there's a Amish selling it for $3.
Yeah.
Or like, oh, here's Buffalo Burger, it's $10 for half a pound. And it's become fashionable, like it's been ripped on by so many shows as gentrifying areas, and it's just a way of duping people out of a lot of money and becoming rich capitalists, but dressing it up in this idea of, oh, I'm here for you, really helping you, and they're really like siphoning your wallet, and then all these people run to this town virtue signaling about how great they are because they're fighting a man, but yet the people that are doing it to them are really becoming extremely wealthy. And it's a very controlled environment to produce this image of helping people, but they're not, because it's really an expensive area to even live in. Like,
it's
opposite of what you're promoting. And also with this idea of hectic lives, that really annoys me. To nothing personal about what he said, it's just my personal. I'm always amazed when it's like, I've got no time to prepare my food. There's 168 hours in the week, and you can't take a to simply sit down, cut some kale, cut some cucumbers, stop pulling out the bag of Doritos and the instant noodles in the microwave. Set your meals up, plan your life out. Stop just running from thing to thing like a monkey all over the limbs of the tree. Meditate and focus. If you've raised more than one kid or even one child, you know how smart it is to plan your meals out. And they're going to be doing, and it's ready. When they come home from school, you know what's going on, so they're not running around like crazed heathens, not focused or getting what they need to make your child healthy. People need to do it with themselves. Doing simple, mindful meals of just sitting there and, chew your food 30 times with each bite.
It's important for digestion. Let's throw it out there. I've done the research.
Yeah.
It's important.
Not going to restaurants with the soundtrack being pumped in, and you're like, eat, get out of there, get in your car, go.
Like prison.
Right, exactly. Yeah, institutionalized. I mean, at least those guys there are somewhat mindful because they're worried about being shanked by the guy next to them. Paying attention. But, I like to reflect on telling people, go on YouTube and watch a lot of people that go to like Zen retreats and they do yokol, which is a mindful eating, or look at like some of the Christian monastic settings when they eat in silence and focus on their meal. Or if you really want to go hardcore, look at the Carthusian monks who live in their cells by themselves and just sit down and enjoy their meal in silence. People don't do that anymore, or just sitting around the table with your family talking about what went on with your life. No, everybody's in their own room doing their thing with their.
Now, Alan, we got to watch TV and watch YouTube and eat in front of the computer and everything. That's more important.
How will we know
between Fortnite battles?
Yeah, how will we know what Kim Kardashian did if we don't?
Yeah, come on, man, give us the time. Stop being a hippie.
I love
growing up in the 70s and like the introduction of the trays to sit in your front room to watch TV with your meals.
Yeah.
And of course, the good shows come on at like 5:36 after everybody's home from work. So nobody wants to cook. Oh, here's the TV dinner.
Yeah.
So you not only got your TV dinner, your tray sitting in front of the TV, no one's connected. And that goes back to the whole thing. WHOLE. We're not connected anymore to our food, to each other, to anything. No one's mindful. They're jumping from thing to thing.
Yeah. And there's this unfortunate idea now that, your worth is based on how busy you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much money you make. The love of money is the root of all evil. Not money in and of itself, because we all need to live. It's the love of money.
But people will brag about it. You're right, Sarah. They'll be like, oh, I'm so busy. And it's like, they sound like they're complaining kind of, but they're actually like, I'm so important. I'm doing all these things.
Yeah.
So what did you do last night?
Participation trophy. That's what they're wanting.
It's like, so what did you do last night? Oh, I watched 3 hours of television, was on the computer for an hour. I'm so busy.
It's like to make food. Yeah.
It's like, wait, what?
Exactly. We just ordered pizza. It's whatever. Yeah. I mean, I mean, and I do that. I mean, I have.
I'm not gonna.
I mean,
I'm not gonna say I'm perfect at that either.
We're not all perfect, but
the whole entire time about this is what I was saying is what Alan is saying is to try to be mindful of it, to try to do it as often, to make it into a habit. Like, I don't expect people listening to make a healthy choice now from every meal and everything here thereafter. It becomes the more often you do it. You know, the more you do something, the more it'll become a habit, and the more you'll become healthy. If you're, if you're doing it more often, and
21 days.
Most people fail diets not because that they're not dieting or anything like that. Most of them fail, or even healthy lifestyle changes fail because they get discouraged because they're like, "Well, I didn't do it this time, so screw it." It's not about being perfect; it's about doing it more often.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, it takes.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say it takes like 21 days to create a habit, and then I read it takes 90 days to create a lifestyle. So if you continue on and you're consistent with those mindful things after like 3 months. Oh, there we are. After 3 months, you have a totally different lifestyle, and you can continue on that mindful path.
It seems overwhelming if you're looking at the whole thing at once and you're in a bad habit where you're not making your own food, you're eating a lot of prepackaged food or whatever because it's convenient, and we are busy people. But if you do one thing at a time, and you make one change at a time, like you're saying, then it's not that overwhelming. And in fact, the way you feel is so much better. Like, you're going to love it.
So maybe choose a water instead of a soda.
Yeah.
Well, and it goes to, like it says in our scriptures, drop by drop, the bucket is filled.
Yes.
You don't have to fire hose what you're going to do. Just slowly do one thing after another. Cut back on the 2 packets of sugar you put in your coffee. You'll get used to the taste of it. And after enough times, you can pick up a stalk of celery, and it's very delectable to you because your taste buds aren't destroyed by Doritos and whatever you're eating. That's just, and I'd also like to make a comment. When I hear people say, I live a busy life, it's by design.
Right.
So when people tell me I can't find enough time, okay, well, you've got 168 hours. Why couldn't you find 15 minutes twice a week to practice what I showed you in our last Kung Fu class?
Yeah.
No. Why aren't I advancing? Well, you've been coming here a year and you never practice at home. What am I supposed to do with you 1 hour out of 168 a week?
Yeah.
Like, you need to take agency for yourself. There's enough people telling you it. Stop listening to all the other people saying, no, download this new package of this, download this, buy the South Beach diet, no Atkins, no men are from Mars, women from Venus. What's the latest piece? Oh, the keto diet. I was listening to a bus driver like, oh my God, I've been craving this and I've been craving that. Well, what have you been eating? Well, I'm on this keto diet. Oh, okay. That's the end of the conversation. Like, so you're not just looking across the board and just eating a healthy, balanced diet.
People don't realize that the keto diet is mainly supposed to be used for people with intractable seizures. It's a medical-based diet in a lot of ways. Like most diets are. No, I'm going to do the keto diet because that's what's fad, instead of doing it either one, he's probably doing it wrong, he's not doing it properly. And 2, most of the time, it's only supposed to be used for certain medical conditions. So it just blows my mind when people, it's a fad, it's something I heard about, I'm going to go do it, and then they end up doing it wrong, or they end up, it just, another thing too, I guess, is it's not like caveman days where we're using all our time trying to survive and eat food and hunt and gather and everything like that and stuff. We actually have downtime now, whether we realize it or not, that we don't have to be afraid of, doing something to survive, especially if we're living in first world countries like the United States, for example. In most cases, there are some people that have to, that live below poverty. And I'm not talking about them specifically, but majority of the average person that you see, they're not, and they have tons of downtime that they just spend with stupid activities. We're all guilty of it. I watch TV, I watch wrestling, I do stuff that I probably shouldn't do. I should be reading or reflecting or praying or whatever, but it's a balance. It's a balance with everything. If you're playing, if you're spending majority of your time playing World of Warcraft, you probably should be doing something else.
Yeah. Well, we are not going to get to some of the questions because we have had so much to say and it's all been really good stuff. But I do want to at least end on the series, on the collective collection of things that we can do to combat all of this evil stuff. And I know we've already hit on some of them while we've been talking about it. Especially right now, we're talking about changing our habits and, making our own foods and visiting farmers markets and stuff. But what else do you guys think that people could do to combat the whole kind of system, or just in their own lives?
Stop couponing.
Yeah.
Because most of the coupons you get in your weekly Sunday newspaper, it's all GMO company.
100%. 100%.
Nice.
Sorry, guys.
That's great advice. That's great advice. I never would have thought of that too, but you were 100% right.
It's not just foods either.
Yeah, take the time to make it almost like, I don't want to use the word fanatical goal to a neurotic level, but make it a very hard, cold goal in your life.
Yeah.
To devote a daily amount of time to research, not only the internet, but also just go to your local library, research a couple things at your library, get like at least a book a week and do some reading. And from that, springboard and thread along. Once you look at a book, look at the bibliography in the back, and then springboard from that, and then springboard from that, and see where the web weaves, that you look into all these other categories and really get into, like, okay, you've got high blood pressure. Well, start looking up everything you can do to correct the high blood pressure that's not going to cost you a ton of money. I mean, this goes back to like when I was teaching Tai Chi at the senior center. I mean, these people are feeling really great effects from this exercise, and they're like, why isn't this taught by so many other doctors and geriatrics people? And I said, well, you're standing here once a week. I volunteer to do this, and you pay $1 a week to do this. There's no machines. There's no pills. There's no long-term expensive cost. There's no giant physical therapist, that's charging your insurance. Why do you think it's not being done? And everybody started laughing because they knew the reason, profit.
Yeah.
And it's really what it goes back to. Anything you're going to adopt doing, or that's a problem in your life, think first and foremost, is somebody duping me for something? And then go from there. Your diet, your lifestyle, your health, everything. And make it a goal in your life to give yourself agency on every aspect that's going on. And I mean, like any relationship, whatever it is, the guy that's selling you your beef, to where you're getting your cannabinoids, to anything you're getting, know where it's coming from, and don't trust anybody at all.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right on.
Yes. Well, I want to promote gardening, because even if, you don't have a big yard and you can't start like some huge project garden, you can probably do container gardening. I've done that before. You can get a huge bounty from a few containers, and you can get containers cheap. Like, you don't have to buy the $90 ones at the store or whatever. You can go grab some giant bucket from somewhere and fill it with some good dirt and throw some things in there to grow. And if you're doing that, one of the things we didn't get to is terminator seeds from plants that don't produce seeds, so they don't reproduce. And that is a good way to like kill the entire planet. I don't know why we would have ever thought of this stupid idea, but except that it makes the money because you have to buy the plants every year again. But do get like heirloom seeds of things that are not commonly grown. Don't just go to the store and buy the packets of seeds that you see there, but like look into seed trading in your local communities if you can, or whatnot, and grow some like real food that people don't have around as much anymore. And it's fun. It's a fun project. It's like a really soothing experience to go out and garden and be in nature. And like Sarah was saying, I didn't even know that you can get those good energies, like bacterias or whatever, that make you feel happy. Like that's how
get dirty.
Yeah. So I think like even if you have like a little project garden that you put on your like windowsill or something to start with, like we were saying, you take like little steps. I think that can be a really good way to bring the power back for your own systems into your own house.
I want to buy a bunch of heirloom seeds and drive down the road and
just throw them out the window.
Yeah, just throw them out the window. And
that's awesome.
Apple seed.
Cross-contaminate all the GMOs and be like, you guys.
So
We're
awesome.
You're going to be
going
sued
back
by
to the way it should
Monsanto
be.
if you do something like that.
Oh, and
They can kiss my ass.
One more thing we can do to combat the evil while you're saying Monsanto again. We should be saying Monsatan because that's what they are.
Yes, they are Monsanto at this point.
I just don't even like saying the word.
And
Don't give it power.
Right. And wasn't Monsanto bought by Bayer?
Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
Now it's Bayer.
Yeah.
We can find a way to say that in an evil way. Sorry, Alan, what were you saying?
Oh no, those Terminator seeds, they've had such a detrimental effect over in India that it has destroyed the lives.
The farmers were committing suicide.
There's been over 300,000 suicides over there because of it, because they've lost everything and have nowhere else to go.
Yeah. And you know, when John was talking earlier about how they don't grow GMO wheat, technically they did have test plots in several areas of the United States, and those plots cross-contaminated farmers' fields. So
yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, you're right. I didn't even think about that.
That big like sting operation to find the GMO wheat fields, and then the farmers that had them were actually getting in trouble for having them. And
it wasn't even their fault. They had traveled over somehow.
It was.
Well, do y'all remember the first GM crop that was introduced in America and how it fell back when people were smarter in the mid to late 90s?
Was it the sugar cane?
No, it was potatoes.
Huh.
Really?
Yeah.
What?
And was it potatoes or was it tomatoes? I know it was tomatoes. It's the flavor saver tomato. That's right. And people wouldn't buy it. They wouldn't buy it, and it failed. And then that's when they started doing the other GMO crops. Like the initial round of GMO crops, people would not. What they found out that it was in their food that they were eating, they were like, because they actually labeled it back then, and it was fairly well known. That the first round of GM crops that they were using, people were just like, no. And so now they don't label them anymore. They got away with it. They're kind of halfway labeling it now. But at the very beginning, people would just not, like, they were saying, oh, these are GM, these are healthy for you. Get them. They last longer. They don't, wilt as fast or whatever. They have better flavor. And people would just instinctively just not buy them.
Wow.
I wish it was like that now.
Yeah.
There's actually back to the fructose corn syrup garbage. There's a massive amount of funding that's going into payback money in schools to have soda machines and pouring rights in the schools to push that with the students. And there's a direct correlation to the attendance, grade levels, ability to pay attention to when they're between classes and getting their fix of sodas and how much money they have available. Literally more money has been spent on like air conditioning for troops in Afghanistan than on like school budget for foods and such. So
Michelle Obama fixed all that now. We have healthy school lunches in our schools now, brother. You can't, no.
I was going to bring that up. If you actually look into when she started that campaign, there was such a backlash to the White House with all of the shills from the various meat and dairy corps that were at the time that the representatives basically shut that down. And that's when you actually see her campaign went from changing the school dietary plan, and all of a sudden the language switched, and overnight she started talking about get out and move more. That's why
But even her plan was still just more grains, though. I mean, let's be real here. It wasn't like it was anything really healthy.
And more chemicals. So, like, we lost our sugary food, our sugary drinks in our vending machines, but they were replaced with sugar-free, which is all disgusting chemicals.
Yeah, aspartame was made by Monsanto.
Because, that food pyramid, grains are at the bottom. Get your servings of grains, even though everything further up the top, except for the sweets at the very top. But if we're talking about the nutrition of fruits and vegetables and properly pastured meat and dairy and stuff like that, that is way more than the majority of your grains will ever be.
One of my students the other day was like, I just had breakfast. And I was like, what do you guys have for breakfast today at the school breakfast? And he was like, a donut on a stick, a muffin, and I can't remember the third thing, but it was like another like wheat sugar item. I was like, okie dokie. I bet you wash that down with some chocolate milk.
Yeah, no orange, no
Our s-
egg.
Yeah, well, school cafeterias are one of the highest concentrations of GMO and modified foods.
It's so gross.
Yep.
It's prison food.
Yep.
It's the same people who
Yeah.
provide the prison food provide school food. It's Cisco
Ugh.
or whatever for most
Well.
people.
Grade D food.
So
Yeah,
gross.
the vegetables being in the pizza sauce, the tomato pizza sauce. Like,
Vegetables.
okay, yeah,
Yeah.
vegetables.
Of course, it's pumped
Yeah.
full of nothing but sugar. So the
Yep.
ketchup,
Right.
hey, at least it's tomatoes. It's got sugar in it,
It's
though.
a serving of vegetable somehow, though, so who cares?
Oh, God.
Counts
So
as a
that's-
serving.
That's another thing that would be helped by gardening. Like we could have a school garden, which they get credit for biology and for whatever you want to
Yeah.
fucking throw in there, and they grow their own food, and then you can use that in the school food program. It saves money. It's
Well,
like
there was actually a school. I think it was either Chicago or New Jersey that did that, and they got a plot of land. All the students in I think it was elementary or middle school, they
That's
grew
middle
all the food, and everybody in the school turned to a vegan diet. Like every problem went away. The
no
grade
health problems.
attendant, every
Yeah.
mental, physical, all the fat weight ratio went down. Same thing has happened in many of the schools who have adopted yoga and meditation practices.
Right.
And instead of detention, it's time out to do like downward facing dog and some stretches to get it out of your system and get refocused again. And all of the problems are being eliminated. And
Yeah.
of course, you can guess all the right-wing religious fanatics are the ones screaming about they're all going to be possessed by demons. So, try to nip that in the bud.
Bro, they already are. That's their problem.
Yeah.
But my school that I grew up in, my school district is doing that. They're elementary, middle, high school. They all have a part in it to play. So they all have different levels of complexity or, whatever. And the garden feeds all the schools, the lowest schools, the middle school, and the highest school. They all share in the bounty of it. And then they even sell some of it too. So they are raising money as well.
I'm pretty sure the
Nice.
meditation groups are better than the Church of Satan meeting at the schools. So pretty sure, they should be complaining about that way more than they should be complaining about meditation.
Well, it's not just
spirituality.
the meditation that they're scared of. It's that people are wearing yoga pants in there.
Oh no.
Okay. Well,
Don't be comfy.
Yeah. All right, let's end on what are your kind of final words of wisdom or advice to people who are listening?
eat local.
Nice. Short and
And
sweet.
find out where your food's coming from. There. That's good. Eat local when you can and find out where your food's coming from.
I like it.
Yeah. Just stop believing everything you see on TV. Seriously. Stop watching the commercials. Stop using the coupons. Just stop buying from the end caps. Quit going to Walmart. Find your farmers. Get balanced. Learn
Nice.
it. Dig in the dirt. Go for it.
Cool.
Yeah. Agency. Take your own agency and slow down. Just slow down. Don't believe the hype that modern, like John was saying, you can be primal in some of your view and your lifestyle and combine that with modern, but find that balance between the most. Make sure, as the Dalai Lama had said, your scientific advancement is staying neck and neck with your spiritual morality advancement, and don't let one outpace the other, so that you are finding a proper middle way and a balance.
Awesome. And I'm just going to say what we already said, which is just take one step, just start one place, and that will lead to other things. So friends, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your electric, concentric, analog dose of wisdom, according to Sarah. Sarah, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's been excellent. And to John, thank you for being here.
Thank you as always, Lindsay.
Second time in one day, superstar. And Alan, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I greatly appreciate it.
It has been awesome. So Satan seems to own the world and seems hell-bent on destroying it. Even though profits drive their motives, we hope they don't seem interested in the long term of keeping the planet thriving in its gorgeous biodiversity. We want the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees around for infinity, for this thing called love to keep on keeping on. And if Satan's motivations are even worse, if it's not just profit, if they are after something other than that, well, then we have found one of our mortal enemies to oppose. At least this one has a name and a locale at which we can aim our attacks, and at least there's something we can all do to not only eat healthier and take care of ourselves, not only to warn others to take care of one another, but to actively organize and create our own gardens of heirloom seed-based plants of all varieties and make healthier choices. Become a certified backyard habitat and help the birds and bees in your neck of the woods thrive. Buy from local people. And who wouldn't love that? Until your gardens are in full bloom and production, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first.